And President Trump is warning Britain not to give up control of Diego Garcia, the largest island chain of the Chagos Archipelago, which has been under British control since 1814. Now, this comes as the UK is preparing to enter a 99-year lease of that island to keep operating its military base there. Joining us now live to unpack this is retired Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, former Marine intelligence officer and now CEO of Global Risk Intelligence and Planning. Thank you so much for joining us, Colonel. The president said that on Truth Social that leasing Diego Garcia could be a blight on our great ally. Help us understand the strategic importance of this territory. Why is he so insistent that the UK retain ownership?
Well, Jack, we have a very large military base there. I was stationed in Diego Garcia years back, so I'm very familiar with that base and what it means to us strategically. It's where we have a lot of pre-positioned equipment. It's where we have a large air facility. And what it's always provided us is an ability to quickly project force into the Middle East. Now, we've done this a number of times. Of course, the Desert Storm most famously is when we sent up our pre-positioned equipment via a little fleet that we have out there up to offload in Saudi Arabia. And then, of course, more recently, we've used it for a variety of things to include the stage bombers to look at, deal with issues such as Yemen and the Houthi rebels there, and of course, dealing with Iran. So it is an absolutely strategic asset that we have. It's a very large facility. The British own it right now. They've been working with the Mauritians. Mauritius says, look, the Chagos Archipelago is part of Mauritius. The former residents there are Mauritian citizens, and they said it should be part of Mauritius. So the British had reached this 99-year lease agreement, but obviously President Trump disagrees with that. He says no, Britain should retain ownership. They should keep it as a possession.
And Trump says that the U.S. could use it to counter a potential attack by Iran, particularly if the Islamic State refuses to abandon its nuclear program. Colonel, what could be the role of the Chagos Islands in a possible military operation against Iran?
Well, with Diego Garcia itself, in the past, we have put B-2 bombers there. We have also put B-52 bombers there. So when we're looking at projecting force and moving things a lot closer, it's a secure air facility that would allow us to project force to deal with whatever Iran does in terms of retaliation. Everything is looking like if we go into a military operation this time around, that it won't be a day or a single strike or series of small strikes. It's going to be probably a multi-week endeavor, and so we'll be doing a lot of air power. And this is a place where we can safely launch and recover a lot of these larger bombers that we can't do from other bases in the region.
Something to certainly keep our eye on. I want to move on to a slightly different topic now. The latest U.S. brokered peace talks between Russia and Ukraine just wrapping up in Switzerland today without any real breakthrough. What do you think is holding them back from making meaningful progress, Colonel?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that the Russians really are insistent that they want the Ukrainians to give up the entire Donbass in its entirety, which would put Ukraine at a strategic disadvantage. It's not just the terrain itself. It's not just the land. It's also what it represents. There's a very large defensive belt that Ukraine has had for years that the Russians can't get through. They don't want to give that up. It would put them at a real disadvantage. And of course, what they're assuming is that you would have, it's not really a peace settlement. It's not what they call sustainable peace. They see it as Russia just simply trying to get more territory without fighting for it. And Russia has not been doing well on the battlefield and trying to take territory. And they feel that if the Russians were to move up in those positions, they could then just wait a few years and then launch another invasion. So Ukraine is saying that's not a sustainable peace agreement. That's not one that's going to last. And they're pushing for something else. And that really is an intractable part of this negotiation. There's just no getting around it.
And we know that one of the Russia's biggest supporters is the Chinese Communist Party. But meanwhile, China is just coming out and pledging humanitarian aid to support Ukraine's energy system. This comes as U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker says that the CCP has the power to stop the war, but has chosen to enable it. Colonel, do you echo the ambassador's assessment? How are you reading China's intentions here?
Well, I think Matthew Whitaker said it very well. He said, look, if they stop buying all the oil and gas coming out of Russia, and they stop supporting Russia. They've been providing a lot of material. Much of the stuff that's actually used by Russia, the materials in some of those missiles, some of those drones used in Russia, have been traced back to China. So China is actually selling them some of the stuff that makes it possible for them to attack these energy facilities that now China is talking about possibly helping with. The big thing China was saying is humanitarian aid. Everyone's finding it rather interesting. Matthew Whitaker just simply points out, it's like, well, okay, but if you do have the power, if you quit buying all the Russian oil and gas that comes out of there, that would put Russia in such a position that they couldn't afford to prosecute the war, and that would end the war quickly. So I think Matthew Whitaker summed it up quite well.
Now, looking ahead, Trump's going to host a Board of Peace meeting here in D.C. tomorrow. Will this initiative be an alternative to the United Nations? And are you expecting Russia to tag along, maybe pulling it away from China?
Jack, that's a good question. President Trump and a number of members of the administration have kind of been putting out a narrative, if you will, about the Board of Peace that originally, when it was proposed, it was simply to deal with Gaza, and it was going to be a board that would oversee a technocratic Palestinian government. Hamas was supposed to be disarmed. Hamas was not going to play a governance role in the Gaza Strip, and this would be this higher thing with President Trump basically chairing it. The UN Security Council actually endorsed this thing based on that premise. But more recently, members of the administration, President Trump, have talked about the Board of Peace as something that will deal with all conflicts around the world. And that's usually a role that's been always relegated to the National Security Council. Now, there is a lot of criticism over the years about the UN and the National Security Council and whether they can actually do much. And there was one administration, I think it was Marco Rubio, had basically said, look, they've been providing food aid and stuff to Gaza, but they really haven't done much in actually solving this. It was actually the Trump administration that stepped in and kind of led the negotiations that led to this. So they're meeting, and there is a little bit of concern that they're trying to usurp the role of the UN in that regard. We'll see how it rolls out. They certainly don't have the broad coverage that the UN has. It's a rather select group that's in there, and it's an unusual group that's in there too.
Now we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Colonel Hal Kempfer, really appreciate your insights. Thank you.